Hello and welcome back to What Steven Reads. My name is Steven. Welcome back to my channel. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. So today we're going to talk about what I'm reading, 2026 reading goals, some book pickups or hauls, whatever you want to call it, and we'll get into all that, so stick around. So let's begin and move that bookmark a little forward. So I think I'm going to talk about The Lilac People by Milo Todd and two other historical fiction novels, and we'll put that into one video centering around World War II, a little bit post-World War II, and what it's like reading those books and the emotional effect it can have on you. Something so sad and horrifying. And I think it'll be a good topic for a video. If you're interested in watching something like that, please leave a comment below and let me know, because this definitely had an impact on me. So what I'm reading right now, if you remember, I had done the big books video, which is the most popular video on my channel so far since starting in August, which is not that long ago. I see it's just a popular topic on BookTube, I guess, that just gets people to tune in. And it started The Stand. So I'm currently getting back into all of that now that it's a new year. I'm done with everything else and all that silliness of catching up with Goodreads Choice Awards and all that crap. So I'm going to continue with Stephen King's The Stand. And it had so far ups and downs, but overall I am enjoying it. I just want to move it along a little bit. It is a big book. It really is. And I hear that it does have a lot of highs and lows and some dull moments and slow moments, but they say it's worth it, so I'm willing to keep on going with it and give it a try. And then, if you remember, for my priority tree of books that I really want to get to, books that are, historically known for being great literature, having an impact on society, and that's what makes it considered a classic, and a few other books. And the first book that I had picked was The Savage Detectives, which I have not gotten to yet, because again, all that stuff in December kind of got in the way. So I'm looking forward to getting into The Savage Detectives by Roberto Bolaño. And I might throw in something else, something a little bit lighter fare. We'll see. It's just that everything I've been reading has been so serious lately, and then everything else with December. So it'd be nice to throw in something a little bit lighter, and we'll get into what that might be as a third book when we get to my reading goals, which is next. But again, these are big books, and putting in a third book to read is really going to slow it down, which also goes into another one of my reading goals. So let's just move on to that. And then, so reading goals. I want to get through that priority tree reading list. Those are books that I passionately want to get to, that people have recommended to me, books that I have heard of but have never taken on to read, either because they were too long or too serious. And, I found that for someone who loves science fiction and fantasy, that I'm read less of that and read more serious literary fiction or historical fiction. So those are definitely novels that I want to get to, whether or not they're 800 plus pages. That's fine. It's just going to have to go slow. And I might redo the tree. One, it looks like a Christmas tree with the red and white paper inside of the little ornament balls. So I think that I'm just going to get a stack of multicolored paper. And when I did that video, I was doing it very fast. And I opened up the first book, which was The Savage Detectives, and I could hardly read it. I was just like scribbling on the paper. So I'm going to redo that tree, and then I'll show you guys that when it's all done. And maybe add in some other books that I've picked up since, because I do want to keep adding to it as I find books that are, just impactful and just literature gold mines, if you will, of stuff to just ingest and read and devour and love. That'd be kind of nice to just add more books as time goes on. Goal number 2, which is part of goal number 1, is just reading great books. I don't want to run out and buy hyped books, which is really what this goal's about. I don't want to spend money on things that are talked about so much, at the current time, and then, in 5 years, no one will be talking about that book. I remember that book that came out in 2025 and just really wasn't that great, but had a lot of hype around it. And I'm not into BookTok. I don't have TikTok on my phone, but that's definitely a topic. Bookstores definitely use the TikTok term BookTok to sell books, and I just don't find right now that those books are for me. And sometimes they do catch my eye and I hear all the hype about them, but I'd rather stay away from things that are just trendy and stick with things that are just a little bit more long lasting and eternal, if you will, as far as literature goes. So hopefully I resist the urge to buy books that are, again, trendy and in the moment, and turn into a Netflix movie 6 months to a year later. It doesn't mean once in a while I do want to read a little bit of a romance novel, but I have not been reading anything like that lately. So I'm going to keep it serious, but obviously well-written books, just not necessarily fluff. And if you read fluff, I have nothing wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with that, because we all want to read stuff like that once in a while. I just don't want to stay in that lane for too long. I'd rather get back to stuff that impacts me, that makes me think, and that lasts a long time with me, that stays with me, and we'll get into that too, because I think I want to do a talk about some books that have stayed with me. And even if they're books that I haven't necessarily, upon completion said, oh, this is a 5-star read, and then I find that like a month later I'm thinking about that book and I want to talk about those books. Why did I give a certain book a 3-star rating, and then a month later I'm still thinking about it and pondering, well, that was really interesting how the author did this or that, and how the outcome came and what it was about. And then I go back and change my rating. So that's why I don't like to review books right after or give a rating, because sometimes your viewpoint changes, and sometimes books do have a longer lasting impact on you. And, case in point, The Master and Margarita. And we could talk about this in another video, but I didn't give it that high of a rating initially, but it's a book that stayed with me, and there's obviously a reason why it stayed with me. It was definitely interesting and, well written, and obviously there's tones in that had to do with Russia at the time, which I don't think, just goes over people's heads now, but that writing definitely stayed with me, and my rating, which I should go back and change it, has definitely changed. So yeah, I would definitely like to talk about that more. Less pressure to read fast. I'm talked about this, not going to get into it again, but reading fast in order to have content for BookTube. I'm just doing this for fun, so I really do want to take it slower and not worry about reading things so fast just to talk about it online. I do this because I don't have people in the real world to talk about books with, and who knows if I would even want to do that. I've never had friends to talk about books with, and that's not a kind of conversation I've ever had. Last time I had a conversation like that was probably in high school, in class, when they tell you what to read, and then you talk about it with everybody. But that's more of a chore than, doing it for enjoyment. So yeah, I'm going to take it slow. And if it takes me a while to read a book, it takes me a while. If there winds up being less videos because of that, so be it. You can't really control what you do in your private time and reading and work and all that stuff. So taking it slow. I want to remember what I read. I don't want to read through a paragraph or a chapter and be like, what just happened? And not remember, and not be able to remember what happened to talk about it with people or all of you out, watching this video. So taking it slow. I do, back to what I was saying before, throwing in something a little bit more casual and not so serious. I want to get back into fantasy, and I think about the last fantasy novel I read that stuck with me was Elantris. And when I finished that, I was like, all right, it was okay. But then I was thinking about it. It was nice. It was a nice escape, and that's why we watch a lot of science fiction, fantasy, or any kind of television, is just to escape, and get away from the monotony of every day. And it's been a while since I read some fantasy. The Spear That Cuts Through Water, I think that's the last fantasy book I read, which I wasn't too crazy about. So I wouldn't mind finding something new or in my library to read and just lighten up a little bit from all the serious novels that I'm reading and that are on the priority tree. And the same goes for science fiction. You know, I love science fiction movies and TV shows. I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm a Star Trek fan. Let me know what you think about Starfleet Academy, if you like it or not. We could certainly talk about that if you want to. I don't mind making a video about that. If you are into that, let me know in the comments. Let's talk about that, whether you like it or not, why you don't like it. Not to get too political, if you think it's too woke or it's too much of a WB Buffy style show, let me know. I would love to talk to someone about Star Trek, Starfleet Academy. So yeah, I do want to throw in some science fiction because a lot of the science fiction I've tried to read, it's different reading it than seeing it in a film or on television. And I must be able to find something in novel form that interests me a little bit more with science fiction. Sorry for the messages, someone's messaging me. So yeah, science fiction and fantasy, I gotta throw that in a little bit more. And then let's talk about some book pickups or hauls, whatever you want to call it. The first book I want to show is, because I'm not sure if I've already shown this to you, and if I did, apologies. It's called The Black Locomotive by Ryan Hughes, and he was the author of XX, which I have not read. And some reviews said this is very similar to XX, but again, you know, it's new to me, and obviously the cover caught my eye, and I'm just going to read a quick little paragraph inside. Like any great city, London is built of brick, concrete, steel, and the creative urge. Over time, old technology gives way to the new. Progress is inevitable, but is it more fragile than the citizens of the metropolis realize? A strange anomaly is uncovered in the new top-secret cross-rail extension being built to connect to Buckingham Palace and Parliament. It is an archaeological puzzle, one that may transform our understanding of history and the origins of London itself. And if our modern world falls, the city's inhabitants might have to turn to the technology of the past in order to save the future. So this sounds pretty cool to me. I'm into trains. I love trains. And I like the little bit of graphics on the inside of the book, if you can see that there. And there's diagrams and illustrations throughout the book. And it just looks like very dynamic and very different kind of read than what I'm used to. I don't know what that's all about, but we'll certainly find out what these illustrations are for in the novel. But yeah, and again, XX I have not read. If you have, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. If it was worth it, if this one is too similar to XX. But again, I don't care because I didn't read the first one anyway, so whatever. And then Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Dewar, if I'm pronouncing that right. I've heard of this book. It's another somewhat fatty book. This I picked up in the thrift store in my neighborhood. I think it was like, I don't know, $4 or something like that. I took off the price tags. But I've heard about this book many times, and it's something I'd like to get to. Let's see if I can just quickly get through the synopsis. It's a long synopsis. I might just skip over. Continued on back flap. That's a long description of a book. Holy crap. All right. Set in Constantinople in the 15th century, in a small town in present-day Idaho, and on an interstellar ship decades from now, Anthony Doerr's gorgeous third novel is a triumph of imagination and compassion, a soaring story about children on the cusp of adulthood in worlds in peril who find resilience, hope, and a book. And In Cloud Cuckoo Land, Doerr has created a magnificent tapestry of times and places that reflects our vast interconnectedness with other species, with those who lived before us, and with those who will be here after we are gone. I'm not going to read through all of this right here. It's a third book in a series. Let's see. Third novel. All right, it doesn't say it's a third book in a series. At least I'm not going to miss anything. 13-year-old Anna, an orphan, lives inside the formidable walls of Constantinople in a house of women who make their living embroidering the robes of priests. That sounds exciting. 500 years later, in a library in Idaho, octogenarian Zeno, who learned Greek as a prisoner of war, rehearses 5 children in a play adaptation of Atheon's story, preserved against all odds through centuries. Sounds very involved. I feel like I've watched part of this movie. I wonder if I turned it off. I don't know, but we'll see. Also in the thrift store, Donna Tartt's The Secret History, which people have recommended to me on the channel in the comments. So maybe I will add this to the priority tree. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Did you enjoy it? Supposedly, this is one of the first dark academia novels. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I picked that up. And then 2 new books I had bought in the last, I guess, month. Maybe the past couple of weeks. This is a translated book. Spatriati by Mario Desiati. Translated by Michael F. Moore, an Italian author. Translated into English. Following 2 outcasts' tumultuous friendship, this brilliant Strega Prize winning novel captures the probing, passionate nature of a generation of global citizens exploring sexuality and identity. I think it's about a few people, young adults in Italy, and I think it has a little romance in it, erotic curiosity, dominated by a rustic faith. Uncertain, she provokes him. So, yeah, just for something different, and it'd be nice to read another translated book. Because so far, most of my translated material is Russian, and this is Italian. I have a Cavallo novel somewhere. I just never got to it. Much smaller than this. This is how many pages? About 365 pages. That's not bad at all. The Italo Cavallo book is a lot shorter if I want to get a taste of Italian literature. But this just sounded nice. I like the cover. I'm a sucker for nice covers. And then, speaking of picking up books, I went to Barnes & Noble twice in the past month, and nothing is catching my eye. All the books that have caught my eye are books that I've already mentioned to you, and books that were on my radar coming out. Back in September, I mentioned these things. And I don't see anything new that is wow, I want to pick that up. It sounds interesting. Most of the new books that came out in the fall, maybe early winter, I've already picked up and already mentioned to you, showed you, and then mentioned to you things I do want to pick up. Amity is 50% off in Barnes & Noble right now. I didn't pick that up. I'm why is it 50% off? Did they make too many copies? Or are people not interested in it? And it's supposed to be a great novel. So I don't know, but just nothing was catching my eye. Except, Spatriati, that was not in the new section. That was just in fiction. And this book as well was not in the new section. It was in, general fiction. And it is Ron Curry, Everything Matters. And it caught my eye. I don't know if the side or if I saw the front of it. I don't know. There's a space shuttle on the cover. In this novel, rich in character, Junior Thibodeau grows up in rural Maine in a time of Atari, baseball cards, pop Catholicism, and cocaine. Throwback to the 80s and early 90s, I guess. So I'd say early 80s, Atari, baseball cards. That's probably what hooked me in. I like those kinds of novels. What's the one? The Perks of Being a Wallflower and the Ghost Hunters book take place in the 80s. He also knows something no one else knows. Neither his exalted parents nor his baseball savant brother nor the love of his life, she doesn't believe him anyway, the world will end when he is 36. While Junior searches for meaning in a doomed world, his loved ones tell a compelling saga of fathers and sons, blinding romance, lost love, and reconciliation, culminating in one final triumph that reconfigures the universe. A tour de force of storytelling, Everything Matters is a genre-bending potpourri of alternative history, sci-fi, and the great American family tale in the tradition of John Irving and Grace Paley. Again, being new to literature, re-literaturizing my life, if that's a word, in the past 3 years, John Irving I've heard of, Grace Paley I have not heard of, so I'm going to have to check out those authors and see what they've written, or if I've heard of any of them. I'm sure I have, just didn't know the author's name. This came out in, let's see. So if this did come out when it was new, I would have seen it on the shelves, but I wasn't around. 2009. All right. So, some time has passed, and the prices of novels have gone up. Probably a year ago, this would have been $18. Now it's $19 Canadian, $26. Yep. Things are getting better, right? That's what I'm being told. I don't know. So we'll see. So that's it for this week. Thanks for joining in. If you have any comments about the books I've mentioned and what you think about doing a book about historical fiction, World War II setting. Let me know. And then I do want to do a video on books that have stayed with me, you know, months after reading it, especially ones that I didn't even give, you know, 5-star ratings to. Please join me on Instagram, same name, What Stephen Reads. That's Stephen with a PH. And if you want to check out some of my photography, I am not a photographer, I am an enthusiast, but I've been doing it for, gosh, 30 years of on and off photography. Some stuff is on my Instagram, which is similar, What Stephen Sees. Stephen with a PH, sees as in sees, not sees as in the sea. So thanks for joining in. I will catch you next time, and enjoy your weekend. And hunker down. It's supposed to be really bad. We're getting a lot of snow on Sunday and into Monday. So stay safe, and I will catch you next time. Bye-bye. Recording.